Thank you so much, Mr. President. Colleagues, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now, the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation, courage. I am so thrilled today to have one of my very, very favorite ministers here as Pastor of the Day. Her speaking at church always inspires me, and I'm grateful that Natosha Reid Rice is spending some time with us today. Just a little more about her background, other than that she is a minister that at my church that I very much respect. She is also a global equity and inclusion strategist, an attorney, and a transformational and impactful preacher, which I can personally attest to. Natosha Reid Rice is also, she wears many hats, Habitat for Humanity's International Vice President of Housing Opportunities and Mission Engagement, and is leading the development and execution of Habitat's global strategy in that regard. She also served as Associate General Counsel at Habitat for Humanity, where she managed financing programs and strategies to generate sources of capital to enable Habitat affiliates to build affordable housing with families throughout the United States. In addition to her work at Habitat, Natosha served as an associate pastor at the historic Ebenezer Baptist Church for 11 years before now serving as the Minister for Public Life at All Saints Episcopal Church, where my family and I attend services. In addition to all of her professional pursuits, Natosha also does so much good work in the community, putting her passion into action by serving on the following boards: the Executive Committee of the Global Harvard Alumni Association, the International Women's Forum, Goodwill of North Georgia, the Community Foundation of Greater Atlanta, the Redress Movement, Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership, and Out of Hand Theater. And in her free time, although I can't imagine how she has any, Natosha enjoys cooking, hiking, traveling, and spending time with her husband, Corey, and their 3 adult children, Kayla, Malachi, and Caleb. Thank you so much. Pastor Reid Rice.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you to the Senator from the 44th, and to Mr. President, and to all of you all for extending this space for me to join you this morning. I must say, in a point of personal privilege, as a daughter of Georgia, from Atlanta, now living in Henry County, with my roots in Snellville, Georgia, this is a great honor. So thank you all for having me with you today. Here is the topic, and I'll be brief. I was told by Mr. Brown I have a little window of time. But I'd like us to think and consider this topic: don't run from the shadows. And if I had a subtitle, it would be, have more courage than the groundhog. As you all know, yesterday was Groundhog Day, and in this frigid environment, apparently the groundhog saw its shadow and ran back into its hole, so winter for 6 more weeks. Based upon Pennsylvania Dutch superstition that says that if a groundhog known there as Puxatawny Phil comes out of hibernation and sees its shadow and runs back into the hole, then winter will last for another 6 weeks. And there appears to be some historical connection between the wintertime celebration of the Groundhog Day and the ancient Christian holiday called Candlemas. Some of you might be familiar with it. Candlemas is a Christian holiday that commemorates the Virgin Mary presenting Jesus to God. Stay with me, I'm not gonna get too churchy because I know our audience and what it is I'm trying to press us forward into. And that's also a day when people would bless candles in churches to bring blessings to their households. In the story of Candlemas, Mary is a witness of what it looks like not to run from the shadows, because in spite of the scary environment in which she birthed her son Jesus, the threats against Jesus' life as a firstborn son, she made her way to the temple, a place that was the central institution in the lives of the people, to raise light, her baby Jesus, in the midst of darkness, and to raise love in the midst of division. That took courage. So I've been reflecting quite a bit these days on what courage means. What does it actually mean beyond concept and when put into practice? Here are a few of the great courageous folks that we know of through history, and this is what they've said. Winston Churchill says, "Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak, and courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen." Mandela says, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." And Dr. Maya Angelou says that courage is the most important of the virtues, because without it, no other virtue can be practiced consistently. She says you can be kind and true and fair and generous and just, even merciful occasionally, but to be that thing time after time, you have to have courage. And courage is not always loud, but it is never silent. Courage can help us to confront evil and violence rather than cower and run from the shadows. And this is the type of courage that calls out evil and demands that it leave. This is the type of courage that I believe that we need in the world today. A courage that stands on integrity, is imbued with kindness, relies upon honed expertise, has a groundedness and a flat-footedness that declares just reality in the face of injustice, that declares unity and community in the face of divisiveness, that declares truth in the face of lies and love in the face of hate. So how do we, those who are serving communities throughout the state of Georgia, embrace this call to courage? Well, the first I would put forth as a how-to is to choose curiosity over fear. Irish poet James Stephens wrote that curiosity will conquer fear even more than bravery will. With the curiosity that you all approach in your particular representative capacities, you're asking your folks, your constituencies, what are the real problems? And then together thinking through what the real solutions could be. That is the type of curiosity that pushes us all to stand up in the face of the mountains that we're all facing. Curiosity causes us to ask questions, helps us to better understand others, the solutions, the situations, and to develop more innovative policies that can move mountains and impact generations to come. I also think that this call to courage is calling us to imagine. The great author Toni Morrison says, as you enter positions of trust and power, like the seats you all hold, dream a little before you think. What does it look like to dream? In the midst of all the social media algorithms and all of the to-do list, what would it look like if we paused for one moment to dream, to think together, and to imagine? This call to courage to not run from our shadows, I believe, calls us into spaces where we're willing to dream bravely, where we're willing to dream beyond partisan entrenchment into a place where we create a reality for all Georgians to thrive. This call to courage is a call to choose the prophetic over the partisan. And before you cancel out the prophetic and think that you're not a prophet of old, let's just be reminded of what a prophet is. A prophet is like an artist who looks at a blank canvas and paints a masterpiece. A prophet is a home builder who looks at communities that have been neglected and says, we can build community here, and walls get erected and windows get put in and roofs get put upon it. A prophet is like each one of you. When you come into this space and listen to all those bills that were read so magnificently fast, and think about how do we turn that into policies that change the generations to come in the state of Georgia, that is the work of the prophetic. Old Testament theologian and scholar Walter Brueggemann says, I think a prophet is someone that tries to articulate the world as though God were really active in the world. He says that a prophet identifies with some clarity and boldness the kinds of political economic practices that contradict the purposes of God, and then pivot and talk with confidence that God is working out an alternative world of well-being and justice and peace and security in spite of that contradiction. We are being called to the prophetic work over the partisan work. We are being called to think about things with courage and cross over divisions and divides, because our children are depending upon us to be courageous and not run from our shadows. And when we imagine together, we ignite our collective hope. Not a hope that sits on a shelf, but a hope that is gritty, that has bloodied knuckles, that has grit between its teeth, that says, in spite of what it may look like, we together can build a Georgia, can build communities that actually turn into hopeful solutions for generations to come. Called to curious, called to imagine, and finally called to community. And how do we build community in this moment? We have to figure out how to love out loud. Justice is what love looks like in public. Justice is what it looks like to love neighbor as self. Justice causes us to build bridges across difference, to have courageous conversations, to push aside the isms, and to figure out what unites us more than what divides us. I love this quote from Barbara Brown Taylor, who says, "The only clear line I draw these days is this: when my religion tries to come between me and my neighbor, I will always choose my neighbor, because my God never told me to love my religion." The call to community is a call to figuring out the hard stuff, which is what you are elected in this place to do. Figuring out the hard stuff, to figure out how we create solutions that benefit our state, our cities, and our towns. I'm the child of a white woman who came to Spelman College in 1968. She met my father, a black man from Snellville, Georgia, and they fell in love. And in spite of her father's hate letter writing campaign, they married. They went on a date. After they married, my mother was carrying me in her belly at the old Rialto Theater before it became part of Georgia State. And they were held at gunpoint by a man who did not agree with their love or the fact that she was carrying the fruit of her love. And he held my mother at gunpoint. I often say I was held at gunpoint, that the love that was produced, the fruit that was produced by my parents' love was held at gunpoint because of racism. Fortunately, they survived that moment, and my parents 2 years later went up to see my grandfather, who had written all of these hateful letters. And I toddled out of the back of this orange van again, I'm dating myself, and ran to my grandmother and jumped, and my grandfather and jumped, and all he could do was catch me. And when he did, he bawled with tears. And from that day forward, never said another hateful word. Love always wins. When we love out loud, we become the representatives of what community looks like, of what courage looks like, and we're able to dwell in this world house that we've all been given. Dr. King's final book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? He writes a final chapter that talks about this world house vision, and in it he says, "This is the great new problem of humankind. We have inherited a large house, a great world house in which we all have to live together, black and white, Easterner and Westerner, Gentile and Jew, Catholic and Protestant, Muslim and Hindu, a family unduly separated in ideas and culture and interest, who, because we can never again live apart, must learn somehow to live with each other in peace. Don't run from the shadows." Won't you join me in a word of prayer? To the great one who created each and every one of us in this amazing world to live in and to figure out how to do so together and in peace, we give you thanks this morning. We don't take it for granted that we're here, that we're in representative capacities to bring forth justice and well-being to our state, our cities, our towns, ultimately our nation and our world. Help us to be the leaders who can lead with courage, with curiosity. Help us to dream and imagine what it could be if we loved out loud. Help us to figure out how to move the mountains before us, the divisions before us, out of the way that we might create thriving communities. Help us to listen so that in doing so, innovation is birthed, strategies are birthed, policies are birthed that impact positively the generations to come. We give you thanks for this great mantle of responsibility and ask that you might give us the strength and the courage to shepherd them accordingly. In your name we pray. Together we all said, amen.